Now we've got a nice dash camera working in our Godot game, but the dashboard itself doesn't really have anything readable on it, so I'd love it if we had a speedometer in our game that told us how fast the car was going. Because it's going to be part of our heads-up display along with our score and our health, that means it's going to be in our main scene in the 2D view, where we've added a canvas layer that's got a few labels inside it, and it's also got this crosshair that I don't really need when we're driving our car. So I'll hide the crosshair for now by clicking on this eye symbol next to the crosshair, and it won't show up anymore in our game. Let's start off by adding a simple label. I'm going to look for label, same as we've used for health and score, and calling this one speed label. I'll set the default text to speed 0, and I'll add a label settings so that I can click on label settings and change the font size and the font color. Might have speed down in this corner for a change, so it's not up there with our score and our health. And let's change the color of this one to green. Have a bit of variety. We've got 3 different colors in our game. Maybe not quite so vivid a green. Now I'm just going to edit this from the script, which means I need to grab a reference to my speed label. I can drag it in by holding down Control, and because this speed label was outside the tree of my car, my vehicle, I'm going to replace those 2 dots with /root/main, so that I'll always have a reference to that speed label. And then I'm going to work out my speed every frame, which means it's going in the process function by creating a speed variable and setting it to linear velocity, which is what my vehicle body uses to report its speed. But this linear velocity is in 3 separate directions, and we just want a single number, so I can turn those 3 numbers into one number by ending it with dot length, and that is my speed of my car. But it is in meters per second, and you probably want to display the speed in kilometers per hour. So I'm just going to multiply this by 3.6, because that's 60 times 60 divided by 1000, and that should change us from meters per second into kilometers per hour. And I can set my speed label text to speed plus that speed turned into a string speed plus space kilometers per hour, so I know what unit we're working in. And this should mostly work, but we'll have heaps of decimal points at the end, which we can fix the same way we fixed it for health, by putting snapped around my speed variable, and then saying that snapped should be snapped to the nearest 1. So that there will give me a nice speed, just showing me the whole number of kilometers per hour that I'm going in the game, which is quite a nice feature. Now we're just going to improve this, because while it's all well and good having the speed just as a bit of text on the screen, I'd love to see the speed as kind of a speedometer dial. Godot doesn't have a built-in way to create the type of dial I would like, but it does allow us to add images into the canvas layer. So I've gone and created a speedometer background image and a speedometer needle that will be able to rotate around that speedometer. These assets will be up on Google Classroom along with the car assets, and you should be able to drag them into the car folder of your assets so that you end up with speedometer and needle. Then I'm going to go to my canvas layer, and I'm going to add a new type of node called texture rect for rectangle, which is how we can add images into our canvas layer. This first texture rect, I'm going to drag my speedometer image over into this texture property on the right hand side, and you should see the speedometer popping up inside the texture rect. And I'm going to rename that one to speedometer. Then I'm going to create another texture rect inside this one to keep everything grouped. Click texture rect, and I'm going to rename this one to needle and drag in my needle image into that same texture property on the right hand side. I've intentionally made these images exactly the same size as each other so that they'll line up nicely. Then I'll click on speedometer and group those 2 images together so I can drag them down into this corner. Now all I'll need to do when we play our game is rotate the needle image so that it points at a different point along the speedometer. There is a bit of a trick to it though. Right now, that needle is going to be rotating around the top corner, and we want it to rotate around the middle. So to change that, I'm going to open up this layout section on my needle. I'm going to open up transform on the needle, and I'll see this option here called pivot offset. That's the point that it's going to rotate around. So you can see that the size of my image is 200 pixels by 200 pixels. So the very, very center of the image is going to be 100 by 100 pixels. And you'll see there, this red cross has ended up right in the very middle of my needle. That means that's the point that the needle is going to rotate around. Now I'm ready to go back to my car script and drag in a reference to the needle so I can rotate it. And just like with the speed label, this one is outside of my vehicle, so I'm going to want to have an absolute reference to it by starting it with /root/main, and then down here where I'm setting the speed text, I'm also going to set my needle rotation degrees, and the 0 point for my needle to be pointing to in this speedometer is -120 degrees. That's the greenmost color, and the redmost color is over on positive 120 degrees. So to get there, I'm going to add on the speed that I'm going times by 240. That gets me all the way from -120 to +120. And then I just divide by whatever maximum speed I want to see. So whatever speed it should be when the speedometer is at the redmost point. And by a bit of experimentation, it looks to me like when you get around about 150 kilometers per hour, the car struggles to go any faster. So I'm making the max speed of my speedometer 150. But you might still end up going faster than that, so it's a good idea to clamp these values between -120 and +120, so that the needle can definitely never get any bigger or smaller than that. Now we should have a nice looking speedometer dial in our game, and if I manage to find enough bare ground that I can accelerate all the way to 150 kilometers per hour, you should see it get around into the red section. It looks nice in the 3D camera, and it looks nice in our first-person camera as well. And I'm probably going to fall off the edge of the map before we reach 150 kilometers per hour, but otherwise it's working fairly nicely. The only slightly weird thing to fix up is that right now it's also including how much speed we have up and down, which you won't really be able to see because we don't move up and down much yet with our car. But we might do in the future if we've got a bunch of ramps. So it is nice to just take this linear velocity and add right in here .slide vector3.up, which will get rid of the up dimension of that linear velocity and only give us the length of the sort of forwards and sideways velocity of our car. So there we have it, an awesome speedometer in Godot.